Welcome, heathens and witches, to the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Pub chat edition. So, for the new people here, welcome, hello. Our pub chats, which come out on the off weeks from the full-length episodes, are just where we,
chit-chat about a thing.
We just chit-chat pub styles. So, like, coffee shop style. Pub style is like the English way of thinking about it. Coffee shop style is the newer way of thinking about it. I would say the American way, but I mean, the American way was also pubs.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Ain't no tea allowed in this coffee shop. Yeah, so we just kind of like go about, this isn't really scripted or scheduled or not scheduled, but like isn't really scripted or researched or anything like that. Sometimes it's not scheduled. Hey, it's Tuesday. Whatever, man. Yeah, so business out of the way. Don't forget to like this video, comment below, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and do all that kind of stuff. We're just going to get right into it. I have no clue what the heck I'm doing. So recently, we read this article that you found on National Geographics.
Yeah, the article is called "Paganism is on the Rise. Here's where to discover its traditions." And then the second part of the text, the teaser text, says TikTok.
It's just a hand gesturing vaguely everywhere. Here's where to find its traditions. And then it says, look everywhere, all the time, forever.
TikTok, specifically hashtag witchtok, is fueling interest in this spiritual movement. Here's how to immerse yourself in full moon rituals, spellcasting, and more. And,
it's a good read. It will be linked it will be linked in the thing below. If you're on YouTube, so these are on YouTube. If you're not listening to this on YouTube and you're just listening to the podcast network, it'll be linked in the description below on YouTube. And on your podcast network, it will be in the details or whatever that's called. It has different names depending on where you, which podcast network you're listening to.
Yeah. Also, fair warning, this may be soft gated for subscription. You may have to sign up and put in your email for National Geographic because they do that sometimes.
Oh. I just read it without an issue, but that doesn't mean anything, I guess. Times a change, I guess. So we're not gonna like just go over the article because recommended reading. Read a book.
Also, you know what we don't want to do is those kind of like graphics where you like put up the text on the screen and then you like highlight it. Oh boy, that sounds like a lot of work. No,
I'm not gonna do any of that. No. That is so much work.
Also, it's
not at all.
It's a pretty quick read. It's not like a super long article.
I almost printed it out to highlight the stuff that I had like an opinion about, and then I was like, this is like not even a whole page. I can just commit this stuff to memory.
Wow.
Not a
big
deal.
You almost printed something out?
Yeah, to highlight.
That's wild.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes you gotta be an old person about stuff.
It's wild.
Sometimes you've gotta boom stuff.
I guess.
Coining a term. But no, so the article is sort of like, just like quick TLDR, the article is basically like in 3 parts. Like one, like
this is the generalized definition of paganism.
Pagan practices like used to be a thing in the old days, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. And then in the 60s they kind of came back for a little bit because of like free love and stuff. And then all of a sudden they disappeared again, and like now they're popular again because of TikTok, which is so wrong and like genuinely so offensive to read. And I know that this person is trying to do like a 5-page essay in like 1 paragraph, so like forgive and forget, but like dude, they glance, they're just like, we don't know what happened, paganism just took a back burner. Do you mean murdered? Because I think the words you're looking for are murdered.
No. It says, but over time, such deities, they named a few deities, Keranos, Isis, and then they just named druids. And then they said...
Druids, no deities, just guys.
Deities. But over time, such deities faded into myth. The rituals went underground. Okay, when I read this line, all I could think of was that point in Fellowship of the Ring, the movie, where Galadriel is like... and they were lost over time. And I'm just like, it's not the One Ring, guys! Yeah, come on!
I think that often we talk about this stuff in this like, like it went underground or it became this whatever. But like, let's be perfectly real here. The spread of like monotheism and the like superpower of Christianity, 100% just murdered all of these traditions. Erased some like grade A1 steak sauce fucking sources and like murdered practitioners and like broke the chain of knowledge that had survived thousands of years. Not in all cases, obviously. In some cases, Christianity just stole the ideas and then replaced them. And this isn't hate necessarily on Christianity, like as it is modernly, right? Because in any situation, there are bad actors and good actors, right? Just because, like, Pope Who Cares Who the 37th was, like, a bit of a dick about pagans doesn't mean that all Christians are bad people. That is an illogical way to live your life and an entire waste of sunlight, right? But, like, that dude was an ass. Pagans were kind of hunted in some places for an amount of time by the spread of Christianity. And it's not just Christianity, because it's like kind of sort of all of the like Judeo-Christian, monotheistic, like uber churchy stuff. Christianity is just like the biggest and most successful one at being assholes about that kind of stuff. Looking at you old popes. But, and like all the crusades. Yeah. But, you know, again, it's sort of like you can be like a modern Christian and still like appreciate and accept and like be cool with pagans existing around you. And you can be a modern Christian and be one of those people. We all know what people I'm talking about. And if that upsets you, you might be one of them. You should probably read your Bible better. Yeah. But, so like it's upsetting, but I hear it very often, like read it very often and hear it very often when talking about, like, the resurgence of paganism. We sort of, like, brush aside, we sort of, like, zzz away the, like, history of why paganism stopped being so much of a thing. Yeah. And I would argue that it's not really even about paganism or heathenry or any specific Celts or Picts or the worship of the Tuatha De Danann or the Norse or the Egyptian pantheon. Or I would say it's not even specifically about non-monotheistic, non-Christian or Judeo-Christian like destruction, but it is the destruction of texture found in faith. Right? I think that the death of texture is the thing that has resulted in, like, a lot of pagan practices being either completely forgotten about. Because, like, you got to think, iceberg rules, all that we know right now about, like, pagan and, like, heathen and, like, ancient non-Judeo-Christian Islamic practices has got to be, like, a small drop in the water compared to what was actually lost. Absolutely. Right? Yeah. So, like, that's what I'm talking about, is that, like, when we lost the texture, because, like, we have texture in modern Christianity these days, you know, in the form that you could be, like, a Catholic or a Christian or a Seventh-day Adventist or a Mormon or one of the other ones. But at the same time, even those are, like, more similar than not similar compared to the old way. As well as Christianity sort of begot this idea, or at least proliferated it to an extreme sense, that you need to, like, one, organize in some sort of a, like, place with some sort of a, like, fancy man or lady who are doing some sort of a fancy ritual only, as opposed to you being able to, like, do your own shit your own way.
And, like, have a doctrine of rules and laws. Yeah,
and well, lore. So not only do they want, like, the locality and control structure, have they promoted that concept, but they've also promoted this idea that, like anything you do that doesn't fall into, like, lore or scripture or, like, whatever is intrinsically less valuable, which I have always disagreed with. I've always believed that, like each person has their own practice, and, like, when we are all sort of similar, you know, hey, we all recognize that today is the solstice, and we're all doing solstice stuff, well, then we can all get together and do solstice stuff. If my solstice stuff is having a barbecue and a beer, and your solstice stuff is doing flower crowns, we can do both.
Literally.
And so, which we do.
A description of
like almost every
our
ritual we do.
solstice.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And we do that, and we celebrate. You know, we do our blots, our Sabbats. Man, that I don't know why. That is the more common word, and it is just not inside of my brain
Ever.
whatsoever. Yeah, I have to call them blots every single time.
Our 10 listeners know.
Yeah, they know.
They've been here.
If you know, you know. But so like we can celebrate the same blot in different ways in the same location, simply with the idea and like focus of like respecting the fact that everybody practices stuff a little differently. And I would even go so far as to argue that like practicing Christians and Catholics probably do something similar, although potentially a bit subconscious, you know, like when I was Catholic and going to church, you know, you've got like fair weather Catholics, you got like holiday Catholics, you got like, you know, you've got the like every Sunday Catholics, you got the like 3 days a week Catholics, you've got like the men's club who are like doing stuff, and you've got like, obviously, so there's like different like things that you're doing in the church, but you're all getting together to do the same thing, right? So this idea already pervades like Christianity, and all these other faiths, but like as soon as you step outside of the like big stone building that defines you as whatever Christian or something, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're doing some things, you're making a sacrifice, and it's like, yeah, bro, it's called an incense. It's not dangerous. I mean, unless you're like mad irresponsible. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, that's one of those things that I mean, I know I'm like blah, 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 blah about this for a while, but it's one of those things that I see and hear and read and hear on witchtok and stuff like that very often, where we sort of faff away, zzz away, like the stain of knowledge, the erasure of information, a thing that I value very, very highly, is like data and information. But like the erasure of information simply because we wanted to remove texture in order to like facilitate control. Well, not us, but them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't talk about that in this article.
Not at all. I know. It's not at all. Like, dude, I read that first. I read that first bit and was just like, this is the thing that I'm gonna be the most upset about. So this is the thing I'm gonna talk about first. Very, very, very angry.
I am of like kind of two minds about this
as
article.
A historian.
One of the things that it said that was interesting here also is that there's at least 1.5 million people in the U.S. who identify as pagans, which is up from 134,000 in 2001. That is a big. That's a huge
thing. Number, and I'm gonna say probably a lie.
There's probably more than that.
The 2000. No. I mean both numbers, but especially the 2001 number.
Well, I mean, it just sort of depends on
134,000, bro. I mean, the 60s weren't long enough ago, my guy.
I mean, I don't know where they're getting this info from.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting thing. But the thing about this article is that, like, they take this really broad strokes, like, explain it in 2 sentences kind of thing for something that is inherently, like, incredibly complex and varying. That's one thing about paganism that I find just fascinating and really I love about being a pagan, being a witch, being a heathen, being these things, is that there is so much out there.
There's so much diversity
of knowledge. There's so many diverse ways that people do their own practices. And
homogeneity of practice.
There's so much homogeneity. And it's difficult to... I can imagine, like, I don't know who this author is, and I'm not saying this author did, like, a bang-up job and was silenced.
I think for a toilet read article, you know, those, like, I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean, like, what's the old way to say that? Reader's Digest. Thank you. Yeah. Like to write a quickie, like, you know, it should be read in like 15 minutes or less, sort of like that kind of like. I know everybody makes shit about the BuzzFeed thing, but that like quick pick article, that BuzzFeed article, I think of it as the like toilet read articles, you know, like if you remember those books you used to get in the 90s before we had the internet and cell phones and shit, guys. Remember when we had to fucking read books in the bathroom? Yeah. If you're young and you don't know what that is, you lucky monster. Like for having to essentially answer the most complex question imaginable in like 15 minutes or less, bang up job.
Yeah. I think that the person who wrote this article, Christine McIntyre, yes. I think that they did. I feel like they probably got into this thing where they're like, okay, I'm going to write this article about this thing, and then started looking into it. It was like, oh, this is like way more complex. Like, I don't know if this person has any history with paganism,
any association,
right?
paganry,
But like, I imagine that they probably were not, and they got into this, and they're like, oh, this should be pretty simple. And then they looked at it and they're like, oh no. Yeah. And they got a little further and they're like, oh no. Yeah. And then they're like, oh my God, there's so many things. I don't even know what to do. Yeah. And then tried to like sort of cobble it together. Yeah. So really, it's not an article about...
It's mostly about witchtok.
It's really mostly about sort of modern pop culture ways to consume paganism, right? So it talked about witchtok, and they talked about several in-person festivals.
Is that American Horror Story?
Yeah.
They do you can watch some TV shows like American Horror Story or some other shit.
They said,
witches or whatever. And I was just like, it's like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and American Horror Story and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah.
And Vikings and Supernatural. Yeah, popular TV shows. Increased interest in the spiritual movement. And then it says, like, where to experience pagan culture.
Let's not even pretend at all that those shows are succeeding because of increased interest in the spiritual movement. Those shows are succeeding for way different reasons, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe some of it, but by and large, most of it not. So, like, it's really kind of a weird article because I feel like this person set out with really high hopes, and either it got, like, crazy edited, or they wrote the title, and then they were like, and this is way too complex. Because I definitely recently had a moment with this, with an episode that I was researching, where I was like, oh, this will be super simple. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, oh no, this is way more complicated than I could possibly cover in the amount of time that I have to research this. There's no way that I could do this. So you guys will be seeing that episode in the coming weeks. It turned into an interesting episode, but like, so that like my two minds is this poor person probably had an impossible task to like sum this into like a Reader's Digest Cliff Notes version of something that is like huge and multifaceted. And then part of me was just like, this isn't what paganism is at all. Like,
well, they really we're also coming at it from the bias of people who like do an immense amount of research into this thing, right? Like, I mean, it would be like if you had to write just like a completely non-associated with the idea of paganism comparison in my mind.
Yeah,
is if you're like, hey, Star Trek is doing really, really good on Paramount Plus right now.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the resurgence of Star Trek. I mean, you can do it in the 15 minutes or less model of article writing, but you're gonna miss like a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's like not at all hate on this, because I think that this article is for a trepidatious beginner or somebody who has maybe not even begun their journey and is just like, I'm feeling a vibe.
Like your Midwestern aunt or family member that does not really these people are rising, and you're like, that is trying to like not portray in this like devil thing. One of the things at the end is like what to know pagan terms, and they give us a handful of pagan terms, and like I kind of laughed out loud.
Yeah,
about these
they're mad like again. If you were in middle school and assigned the task of making Merriam-Webster style definitions of words that your teacher assigned you, and you're like, yes, I know this word, I'm going to tell you what it means, and it's like technically you're correct, but also not like, enough.
Like
tone
one of these
context.
Definitions is Wiccan, a practitioner often called a witch or a wizard of Wicca, one of the largest modern day nature-based pagan religions. So yes, Wicca exists, and yes, this is a way that you can define that, but it essentially makes it so that anybody who calls themselves a witch or a wizard in this is identified with Wicca, which is definitely not the case.
Yeah.
But then they also just have some odd things. They were like Isis, and then what is Kemetic? Where was it? It's like Kemetic witchcraft, and then They talk about what Kemetic, a person who follows the beliefs of the ancient Egyptian religion. That is absolutely correct. Where is Hellenism? An arguably larger cross-section, at least on the West Coast.
It's just the ones that, I mean, they're just definitions for, like, the thing that they're saying in the article or whatever.
But also, like, some of these are really great. Like, witchcraft, a religious practice involving magic and affinity with nature, usually within a pagan tradition. Not bad.
Yeah.
A thing. Also, full moon ceremonies, a ritual event that takes place during a full moon to help release negativity and recharge spiritual and emotional batteries.
Yeah, sure.
If that's how you choose to do your full moon ceremony.
I feel like that's too specific a definition.
Yeah.
Because, like, your full moon ceremony could be something entirely different than that. But again, like, if you don't know, you don't know, right? We always have to remember that as soon as we acquire knowledge, we are no longer capable of really properly understanding lacking that knowledge again. We remember kind of what it's like to lack that knowledge, but the human brain is...
We can think about it in like an abstract nature, but not in
in any sort of a practical
not in any
sense.
sort of a practical way.
Correct. So we never know what we can never understand what it's like to not know a thing that we know. And at the same point, we can't understand what it's like to know a thing that we don't know, because generally you don't know what you don't know. A circularly obvious statement, but meditate on it. It's more profound than it seems. This isn't like my shit, by the by. This is just like a bunch of research and data that I've acquired. But so, like, again, it seems like this person, they were given their all. It'll be linked below. Give it a read. Certainly give it a read.
Give us a read. Tell us what you think.
I think it's super interesting. What do you think? What do you disagree with? How upset were you that they kind of glanced over their Christian thing?
So,
but then the bigger question I think posed by this is, do we think that there is... Like, okay, so like let's just kind of yes-no some shit real quick. Do we think that paganism, the overarching umbrella of non-monotheistic, well, I wouldn't even say non-monotheistic, I would say non-standard Western Judeo-Christian practice.
Just use the word pagan.
Yes, because that's what they're saying, but I think it's broader than that. Is that on the rise? Of course.
Absolutely, I think so, yes.
Is it on the rise because of hashtag witchtok? No.
I disagree.
Let me explain to you why no. No, it is not on the rise because of that. The rate at which it is rising is affected by that. I think that the reason why paganism is on the rise is a social pressure. I think that the rate at which it's growing, just like the rate at which almost all social movements today are growing, is purely because TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these other things, and TikTok's the biggest one, so that's why that's the one that everybody's focusing on, as well as the one where a lot of voices are being able to share a lot of information in a very, very efficient way, which is why it's like, you know, the thing that's going on with the country right now. But I think that those are increasing the rate of rise. If it weren't for social media, would we have gone from, we're going to assume their numbers are perfect, 135,000 to 1.5 million in the same amount of time? No, probably not. But I think that TikTok and social media overall is simply acting as a communication superhighway with regard to the rate at which it's rising. I think the rise of paganism is certainly not because of, and definitely not the fault of, social media, because that's the way that some people are going to look at it. I think that it's really a byproduct of like social pressures with regard to, and they mention this in the article very, very briefly, and I think they do a good job when they do mention it. It's like a lot of young people are real concerned about the fact that, like, climate change is a problem that a lot of people are, like, seemingly unconcerned about. But we're gonna be here when it's a problem, so we should be concerned. And you know, you're having these social pressures to like fit into this thing that you don't associate with and that you're not a part of, or you grew up as a part of and it was like not great. And so they're like leaving, you know, I think you hear a lot of stories about people like leaving Christianity. And like, oh, like I'm leaving Christianity and I'm finding this path or whatever. I think that paganism benefits in the same way that everything benefits from social media, with regard to like communication and information availability and things like that. But I think that we need to kind of understand that it's a social pressure that's what's causing this revolution in paganism, in the exact same way that in the 60s, social pressure caused a huge boom in paganism. The difference is that in the 60s, it didn't get to grow as fast. The soil wasn't as rich with data for these pagans to grow because you had to read a book or like find a guy. If you lived in like bumfuck nowhere, Tennessee, you didn't have anything. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, honestly, the 60s was when the motherfuckers was writing the books, you know?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of these, you know, we've talked on a lot of occasions, like a lot of these religions kind of came about then. But like also the thing is I think that TikTok plays a bigger piece in this than just saying like, oh, well, if it wasn't for TikTok, there would be less. I think TikTok adds a lot of agency and adds a lot of availability to the information. And like the thing about it is TikTok right now is just sort of like this weird, like TikTok is a place, it is an app, witchtok is a thing. I am there. I am trying to get like some videos on there, but we got a lot of things happening. Oh my God, so many things. And I don't want to abandon you guys listening through this channel either. So like the thing about TikTok is it's not just a thing, it's not just an app. The way that TikTok has you consume this sort of stuff and has the availability for this stuff and creates the community for this kind of stuff, I think is absolutely revolutionary. The way that paganism and witchcraft and all this other stuff is looked at. Well,
I think it's revolutionizing the ability for it to spread. Insofar as I think if you were to give it a biological comparison, TikTok is the perfect petri dish for consciousness altering ideas.
Absolutely.
Simply because it is warm and it is nutrient dense. And by that, what I mean is it is warm in that you're not consuming a 25-minute video. I'm not asking you to sit here for 45 minutes and listen to my stupid face explain to you what Odin is.
I mean, but
right?
like kind of.
I mean, I'm asking you to do that. Please do that for obvious,
but
right?
Not on TikTok.
But not on TikTok. On TikTok, it's 3 minutes or less. And again, that's that I know the term sounds bad, but that's that toilet article thing.
That's bite size.
That's that bite size.
Yeah,
thing. Yeah. That's bite size thing. That means that every time you have 5 minutes break at work, you can go scroll, hear a little bit about it, put it down, walk away. The benefit of that is that when you're doom scrolling, not great for your mental health. But when you're not doom scrolling, when you're simply taking some of it in, little bits of information like that in, you're doing the same thing that like speed reading does.
Yeah.
All right, where you're consuming 3 minutes, maybe you consume 9 of them or 5 of them or whatever. You're consuming a small amount of a vast data pool, and then you're given a little bit of time because you got to do some other shit. You're given a little bit of time to process it, and then you're back in, and you're out, and you're back in, and you're out, and you're back in. I mean, this is like literally the thing that they tell you to do when you're learning a new language. This is the thing that they tell you to do when you're learning maths, or you're learning, you know, like in school when you're doing homework. Like you should be doing like bite a homework, take a break, bite a homework, take a break. You're gonna learn faster. Yeah. Right.
Well, I don't think
I think that the warmth of TikTok is the fact that you're consuming very nutrient dense, very like high concept shit in tiny little bites that are giving you a period of time to think back on. And because unless you're like on hashtag witchtok only, which I don't even know that you would be able to successfully do well on TikTok, but you know, you're going to be like, somebody's saying some shit that just like rocked my very consciousness. And then that's a dancing person. And then like, that's a funny guy. And then
I mean, that's like very much our experience on TikTok.
But that's the thing though, right?
Yeah.
I hear this thing that requires like a lot of like top of brain, big thought energy. And then I have like some nice entertainment. Well, while that entertainment's playing, even though I might not be consciously and actively thinking about it, in the back of my head, I just listened to 15 minutes of Alan Watts and I'm like, a little shook and might need to sit down about it.
I think in short, TikTok really gives availability. Accessibility
that's the other
right?
bit, is that
but
it's
I think
everywhere.
that the other part of the rise of paganism, which sounds like really fun to just say, is I think that there's a lot of people who are looking to replace outdated structures in their life that they have just been doing because they thought that they were supposed to, or that's what their family did, or that's where they lived and that was the thing, or that's what most people do, with something that is more authentic and that means something more to them. And that's something that's really very interesting about paganism. And we have a friend who has a YouTube channel also, and she also works with Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is my pagan goddess, is my patron goddess. She's also my pagan goddess. But in talking with her about things that she does for Aphrodite and things that I do, we both have very different ways of interacting with this deity energy. And, you know, we often talk about how John and I have differences in the way that we worship. So that's just the two of us.
We practice
that's just a sample size of three
very
people.
Different stuff.
But I think what paganism really allows is that you have this ability to sort of customize you have the ability to build your own bear in a way that is so much different from what you can do with Christianity.
I don't know that it's where
like big Christianity
where paganism succeeds. I think it's where paganism has the most potential to succeed, right? Because we've talked about, if you've listened to our podcast before, we've done episodes on like toxic internet witchcraft, and we've talked about like gatekeeping and things like that. And so, like, again, there's always going to be like bad agents in the Matrix, for lack of better words. But I think where paganism has a higher likelihood to succeed and be found like attractive to an audience, especially an audience of uncertainty, is that even though there are bad agents and even though there is gatekeeping, a large proportion of paganism is a direct reaction to like that over clamping of like freedom. Right?
Yeah.
Because in paganism, not in all paganism, obviously, but in a lot of it, you're seeing that I'm saying a thing, and then you swipe up to the next TikTok video, and now she's saying a thing. And I said some different shit than what she said about some different shit. But both of us are saying, hey, you live your best life, you try your hardest, you're doing a good job, and there are no wrong answers about it. Right? And to a lot of people, that is a profound difference. I don't think paganism is succeeding on the back of Christianity failing. I think
absolutely not.
I think that is the misinterpretation that people want to have an answer to, because then it's the baseball team thing, it's the football team thing, right? My team is losing and your team is winning, or your team is winning and my team is losing. And what I think that the reason why paganism is succeeding in the manner in which it's succeeding is because if you are in a family, in a Christian family that does not have support for or support you in your personal practice as a pagan, paganism isn't telling you to disagree with your family. Paganism is telling you that you're a good person and you are doing the right thing and you are trying and you are learning, and that if you approach these things with good energy and with love and intention and the belief that you can kind of learn from all of the things regardless of where that is, then like that's good and you're doing the right thing. And I think that broad stroke acceptance, the ability to be like, oh, are you different than me? That's okay. That statement, are you different than me? That's okay. Like, put that shit in quotes, is the reason why paganism is succeeding and growing. This does not mean that you cannot be pagan and also Christian, or some form of Christian paganism, a thing that has existed in history,
Christian or and interested in this
stuff. Exactly. I think it's because paganism is more accepting of being different, and I think that in a world where we are fed bite-sized 1 minute to 3 minute segments of vast knowledge, it's easier for us to observe difference.
Yes.
From the oneness that is all people. And I think that conceptually, right, the ideas that, like, Christianity teaches, none of them are technically wrong. The interpretations may be wrong, right, and or misled, or being used for a negative light or something like that. But, like, you're not, or at least for the most part, right, you're not joining some sort of pagan belief structure, or you're not beginning to explore your own pagan belief structure with the backbone of all of these people are wrong. That is not at all how that works. And if you are starting that, you're generally coming into it in a toxic place, and it's not going to be a thing that you're into anyway, right? But the fact that paganism is accepting, and for a lot of people, the thing that they left was less accepting. Not always necessarily less accepting of their shit either. Sometimes it's just like I'm not feeling not accepted by the church, but I'm seeing people that I care about, or that I vibe with, or whatever, or even just outsiders that, like, I don't understand why you're hating on those people, but they're being hated on. Well, in a world where there's another answer, but that answer is cool with these people being different, like, obviously, you know, it's that be the water thing. Like, the water's gonna flow to the easiest direction.
Yeah.
It makes more sense that way. I think that paganism doesn't succeed in the lacking of, like, Judeo-Christian monotheism. I think that it succeeds because it represents a thing that a lot of the structures of that modernly don't support.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, like, I know that was, like, a very roundabout ass way to say that, but, like, it's one of those things I think about this very often, because I was born and raised Catholic, and, like, I still enjoy Catholic Church, to be perfectly honest with you. There, you know, like, I like Stations of the Cross, I like Midnight Mass. We've talked about this if you listen to the podcast. But, like, from my perspective, and I think one of the reasons why we work together so well, practicing just insanely different things. Just so different, right? I mean, we could do a whole episode, like a whole full-length podcast episode just on the differences between the way that we practice. But I think it's because, like, all right, you're going to practice your way, and you're going to practice your way, and I'm going to practice my way, and why do we got to fight about it? Yeah. Right? Like, if we're doing a blot, and we do this, like, for our rituals, when we do, like, blots with the fam and the friends and such, is like, hey, okay, we're gonna have, like, food, and we're gonna do this ritual, and we're gonna do whatever, and if, like, that's not your cup of tea, shut up. Everybody else has been quiet, you also be quiet, right? If we're doing a thing and you're putting stuff in the bonfire to, you know, like, we generally have, like, we got, like, leaves that you could write on, you know, and then put it in the bonfire, so that way you're, like, releasing the energy of some negative thing that you're trying to release, a thing that we've done before, right? Yeah. If you want to participate. If you don't want to participate, also gangster. If you brought some different shit to burn because that's the different shit to burn, so long as it's not, like, toxic or whatever. But, like, all of our people know not to burn toxic stuff for obvious reasons. Because we're all adults.
Yeah.
But, like if you're like, oh, I'm not doing, like, leaves and writing, but I got, like, a wreath that I made whenever, like, I put a little bit extra in every time that I was feeling a shenan.
Yeah, or, like, a
and now I'm gonna burn it, or a letter that I wrote, or whatever. That's also fine. Fire is fire. The ritual is peacefulness and togetherness. And the way that we interpret and practice within those spaces and physical things doesn't have to be the same for us to be able to join together and understand that people are different, right? I mean, there's food that you like and food that you don't like and food that I don't like and all the different vices and versas of that. And that's fine.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that that's, like, the big draw in paganism. I think that's the reason why.
A really great way to explain it is if you think about it like a restaurant, like you think about sort of like,
you can be
even
Five
back
Guys,
in the 60s,
like, ain't no vegetarians
the
going
only
there.
thing that you had, like, is not saying back in the 60s the only thing you had was American diner food, but, like, speaking of it,
that's not true,
yeah, speaking of it from, like, a spiritual context, like, back in the 60s, you didn't, you know, all you really had was diner food. All you really had was this like standard
normal
spiritual thing, right? And then you had some like fringe restaurants that you could go to, but like there were less of them. They were farther away. It's harder to find. And really like paganism is kind of like a buffet where there's like a bit of everything. You want diner food? Great. You want some egg rolls? Great. You want some barbecue chicken? Great. Like it's all kind of like, think of it like a buffet where there's so much and you can load your plate with anything that you want from any place that you want. Well, and you're not tied to a very
paganism
specific
is the restaurant
thing.
Portion of the Yellow Pages where you can partake in whichever food you want. And it's going to tell you the distance, the amount of work it's going to take you to get to that food, right? But you can have any food. If you want sushi and the nearest sushi place is 3 towns over and it's going to take you an hour and a half to get there. If you want sushi, you're going to drive that hour and a half to get there, right? And you can sit in a silent car like a crazy person and drive angrily all the way there because it's going to take you an hour and a half to get there. Or you can drive in a car and have fun with your friends and family and sing and listen to music or listen to your audiobook or whatever and enjoy the process of getting to the food that you want to eat, right? I think that witchtok is exactly that buffet. Yeah. I think witchtok is that Las Vegas buffet where that row is Chinese food and that row is American food and that row is Japanese food and that row is just like 12 dudes with knives cutting up every form of meat you ever seen in your whole ass life and a few that you do not know what it is, but it was mad tasty, so you got to take a picture of that card at the buffet line.
And
right?
also, maybe there's stuff that you absolutely hate.
Yeah,
like maybe that buffet done got banana sushi, a thing that just sounds horrific to me.
That's true. That's fair. Yeah.
That's like, or like
sushi made entirely out of banana.
Banana cream pie. Also, not a fan.
Not into it.
Not literally
not a fan.
Of
the banana
not
cream
at all.
pie.
I don't want banana flavored things. And like for me, that's
banana
like
bread's fantastic. She's wrong.
No, I don't want banana flavored things. No. Not ever. So like it's kind of like that. So it's like, yes, you can find all kinds of really amazing and cool things, but you also might find some stuff that you don't like.
Yeah.
And
that's fine. Because
fine.
It's a 3-minute bite on witchtok that you just scroll past. And if you scroll past, if you hear it and you're like, I'm not into this, and you scroll past it, the next time it comes up, you're going to scroll past it a little bit faster. And the feedback loop of the algorithm, and the algorithm isn't like this big, hyper-intelligent, manipulative thing. Guys.
It is, though. But it is.
It is only because you are not reacting to the algorithm in the same way that you would react to those situations in real life. Right? If a video comes up and you don't want that shit, you scroll past it. Don't wait.
Don't
interact.
Scroll
past it. Don't interact. You scroll past it. And then the next time something similar comes up, you scroll past it even faster. The algorithm only cares about like a few inputs and a few outputs. It is not that complex. We watched that whole thing about how the AI thing is like kind of a hoax.
As a professional
it's a whole thing, dude.
Who works in social
It's a whole
media,
thing. It only seems complex because we want to allow it to seem complex because that's kind of the way that we're told that it needs to be treated.
I mean, but that's kind of how it is. I am someone who does social media for a 9-to-5 job.
My algorithm only feeds me solid gold oldies, so I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Well, that's because you've got the inside track, and that's me to tell you how to handle that. So,
I mean, maybe I was from the internet, guys. I'm in the Matrix.
So
I might be Neo.
Anyway,
he was older.
Is paganism on the rise? I think yes, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to be on the rise, especially as a lot of organized stuff continues to do not smart moves from a business standpoint. Because there's sort of two ways to look at any religion. There's the like faith, practice, beliefs, tenets, and like communities and cultures around it. And then there's the business of religion. They're separate things. In my mind, I think about them as very distinctly separate things. And the business of religion in a lot of the larger organized monotheistic forms, the like big tentpole, like stone monolith type religions, they're not adapting to reasonable shit as fast.
Yeah.
And that's gonna cause them to simply not grow as fast, Jesus. Not to grow as fast.
Well, and we're also
right?
finding out that, I mean, not like necessarily recently, but in the grand scheme of things recently, we're also finding out that a lot of these long-standing institutions have some pretty nefarious
like
things
dark shit
associated with them.
Yeah,
and
totally.
that goes beyond like the big M word that's associated with the Catholic Church.
Sure, yeah.
There's other things that are dark about a variety of different organized religions. And I think that that's another thing that is
Make them pay taxes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think that's one of the things
Interrupt,
that's
but important.
driving the curiosity for people to learn more about paganism. So
yeah, or just otherness. I mean, and is your otherness personal and private and quiet? That's fine. Is your otherness loud and structured and occult? Also fine. Also fine.
I mean,
right?
Asterisk.
Unless it's like a shitty one. Okay, let me tell you the secret to paganism right now. Before we end this, don't be an asshole. Honestly, that's not even paganism. You want to be good Christian? Don't be an asshole. You want to be good any other religion, any other faith, any other practice, or an agnostic or like non-believing person, and you still want to be a good person? Don't be an asshole. The secret to life is so simple. Don't be an asshole. It's very easy. When asshole shit comes up, don't be that shit. It's that easy, right? The problem is we got a lot of assholes around right now, so I don't know what to do about that. I'm not in charge of that.
Okay, well that's a weird end.
Don't be an asshole. That's why paganism's on the rise, guys. Less assholes.
Yeah, I guess.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, or whatever the saying is. Whatever, man. You know what I'm talking about. Either way, because I'm going to keep talking if this continues to go on. Either way, I have been John Norgrove.
He's still going to be
Julie
talking.
Norgrove. We're going to talk about this after the camera turns off. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
Off.
It's only her problem, guys.
Count yourselves lucky.
It's okay. It's just for her.
It's all right, guys. I'm taking one for the team.
Yeah, it's more than one.
More than one.
This has been the Horn
and Cauldron
podcast. Pub chat edition because of the drinking and the chillness. So it doesn't change whether it is the pub chat or not.
That does not change.
That's fair. We hope to see you guys again. Don't forget to like this video. Do the before we go.
Yeah,
part.
Before we go, thank you to our patrons, Alan, Miranda, Alexa, Helena, and Somewhere, for helping us do the thing that we do and better every time.
Yeah, you guys are
we
awesome.
could not do this without you.
Yeah.
And don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, comment on our social.
All the stuff's in the thing below or to the side or to the other side or above me.
You know, let's make this a little community, guys.
Yeah. And don't be an asshole.
And don't forget, breathe in self-confidence and breathe out self-doubt.
Yeah.